sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One. Well, the 60-day Memorandum of Understanding is in its final hours now, and a deal between the U.S. and Iran has yet to be reached. Chief Foreign Correspondent Trey Yingst has more live from Tel Aviv. Trey.
Yeah, good afternoon. Monday will mark 60 days since the United States and Iran signed the Memorandum of Understanding, and technically it is set to expire. Reports indicate very little diplomatic progress to reach an agreement to reopen the Strait of Hormuz and address Iran's nuclear ambitions. We do know this weekend Iran continued attacks on vessels around the strait. On Saturday, a boat reported being hit by an unknown projectile. A day prior, an Emirati oil vessel was also targeted. President Trump spoke on Friday about the conflict with Iran and the Strait.
We're capable of really destroying the whole place. We don't want to do that. We have got economic sanctions against them like nobody's ever had before. We own, in the true sense, we own the Hormuz Strait. If they hit, we would hit back 100 times harder.
With a focus on Iran, we're also tracking the latest developments between Israel and Iran-backed Hezbollah in Lebanon. Hezbollah violated the ceasefire over the weekend, wounding 3 Israeli soldiers. This prompted Israel to launch a new round of strikes against targets in southern Lebanon.
Hezbollah committed 2 major violations today. They struck Israeli troops who were operating in the security zone in contravention of the ceasefire agreement, and Israel responded. They moved civilians inside their terrorist headquarters. They used their own civilians as human shields so that later on they could point at Israel and say that Israel is targeting civilians, which we are not doing.
Overnight, the Israelis warned residents of northern Israel to be prepared for loud explosions along the border as they continue to operate against Hezbollah. John?
All right, Trey Yingst reporting live from Tel Aviv. Thank you, Trey. Let's bring in Mike Sorelli, a retired Navy SEAL officer. All right, so Mike, we've been talking about the fact that this Memorandum of Understanding is about to expire. Doesn't appear there's any new movement toward a replacement peace deal of any kind. So where do we go from here?
Good to join you on Sunday. I think this is more of a diplomatic deadline than it is a strategic deadline. Let's be honest, this ceasefire was badly damaged, if not clinically dead. We're stuck between this intermittent combat and economic warfare to the point that this juncture, it's inconsequential. I think we're looking at time, and the administration has to be prepared to take this well beyond the November 3rd midterm election cycles, which will be damaging to them with independent voters. But time has been a weapon that Iran has always used. It's increasingly becoming a weapon for the U.S. and the global community. Iran's economic posture is damaged by the day, more so. So at this point, a military, economic, diplomatic alignment campaign that is governed by conditions and outcomes, not inconsequential dates or election calendars.
As you've been speaking, we've been watching live as the president boards Air Force One in Morristown, New Jersey. He's spending the weekend in Bedminster at his golf club there, and he's about to head back to Washington, D.C. He's raised a few hackles by suggesting that the United States might make the Strait of Hormuz a U.S. territory. Is that practical? Is it possible, Mike?
Possible, no. I don't think the Strait of Hormuz requires an American flag. It requires international enforcement for freedom of navigation. This is Trumpian theater and less a legal proposition. We just cannot annex a strait by proclamation. So it's just playing into his negotiations, and I think ultimately telling Iran that we will go the distance with the blockade and any security to secure the maritime traffic that's impacting the global energy community.
Well, at the same time, Iran is under that blockade that has apparently turned away at least 62 ships. It's hard to think how they're, continuing to thumb their nose at the United States when there's not much of any kind of commerce getting across their borders and into their ports.
Well, there's 2 sides to that sword. One, it's damaging Iran badly, but at the same time, maritime traffic through the straits is not even close to where it was pre-war. So it's impacting both sides. And at the end of the day, Iran may be damaged, They're not dead, and it doesn't require much to disrupt the Strait of Hormuz. So all eyes are on the Strait of Hormuz, and that's what's going to be the focus in any negotiations with Iran at this point.
Here is the president saying that he might consider making the strait a U.S. territory. Listen.
After we finish defeating, which is being very badly defeated, pretty soon I'll be declaring the Hormuz Strait a territory of the United States. We have the blockade. No through unless we want them to.
You're suggesting that's more about theatrics than actual policy.
It's galvanizing his base, and what better base when you're speaking to a bunch of first responders from New York that wildly support President Trump. You know, he's got Iran where he wants them with the blockade, the economic sanction. Again, it just comes down to time. These are crippling to Iran. You pair it with probably some additional military strikes on their infrastructure, but additionally what the commentators are missing is diplomatically, you know, we are seeing an aligned Middle East that we have not seen in for at least our lifetimes. You know, with a recent pact between Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Pakistan, an attack on one is attack on all, and then also a Red Sea maritime coalition that was signed by 14 Gulf states. So that alignment is ultimately going to be the biggest strategic miscalculation by Iran. They've aligned the entire. They are further isolated. Again, we just have to give President Trump time to lay the seeds for what could be the end of days for this regime.
Turn our attention to another topic. Your former service, the Navy, is generating a lot of headlines, most of them not good this week, because of reports that sailors on board the USS Lincoln, the aircraft carrier, are in, terrible straits, suicides, bad food, etc. Those are the allegations, because the ship has been on duty in the Persian Gulf area for 260 days, much longer than a normal deployment. I want to get your thoughts on that first, and then we'll play some sound.
Yeah, we're always concerned about fatigue. And when you're sitting on a ship, every day becomes a little more monotonous. But what I want to be cautious is that we're not extrapolating maybe a handful or a few dozen sailors that speak for the other 5,000 Marines and sailors who are executing duties to the highest every single day. So while it is worthy of an investigation and taking a further look, we've got to remind these sailors too that it is our job. John, I had 10 combat deployments ranging from 4 months to about 8 months. Army sometimes did 15 months during the height of the Iraq or Afghanistan war. This is doable. And what these ships to keep their people determined, steadfastly loyal to the mission, and focused to get the job done.
One of the criticisms is that we need more aircraft carriers rather than the 11 carriers we have. We should have 15, but it takes a long time to build an aircraft carrier. So those numbers are going to stay the same for a while. Mike Zarelli. Mike, thank you.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.
Everybody, the 60-day ceasefire agreement between the U.S. and Iran set to expire tomorrow as tensions remain high over the Strait of Hormuz, and the talks between Washington and Tehran remain uncertain at best. President also warning Iran, saying he would hit back if attacked.
Capable of really destroying the whole place. We don't want to do that. We have got economic sanctions against them like nobody's ever had before. We own, in the true sense, we own the Hormuz Strait. If they hit, we would hit back 100 times harder.
Chief Foreign Correspondent Trey Yingst, live in Tel Aviv with the latest. Hey, Trey.
Yeah, hey, Kevin, good afternoon. Monday will mark 60 days since the Memorandum of Understanding was signed between the United States and Iran, and technically it is set to expire. There are no reports of serious diplomatic progress to reopen the Strait of Hormuz and address Iran's nuclear ambitions. And this weekend, Iran continued attacks in the Strait. On Saturday, a bulk carrier reported being hit by an unknown projectile. A day prior, an Emirati oil vessel was also targeted. President Trump spoke on Friday about the conflict with Iran and the Strait of Hormuz.
After we finish defeating Iran, which is being very badly defeated, pretty soon I'll be declaring the Hormuz Strait a territory of the United States. Essentially, that's what it is. We have the blockade. No ships get through unless we want them to.
With a focus on Iran, we're also tracking the latest developments between Israel and Iran-backed Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. Hezbollah violated the ceasefire over the weekend, wounding 3 Israeli soldiers. This prompted Israel to launch a new round of strikes against targets in southern Lebanon.
Hezbollah committed 2 major violations today. They struck Israeli troops who were operating in the security zone in contravention of the ceasefire agreement. And then when Israel responded, they moved civilians inside their terrorist headquarters. They used their own civilians as human shields so that later on they could point at Israel and say that Israel is targeting civilians, which we are not doing.
Overnight, the IDF warned residents of northern Israel to be prepared for loud explosions throughout the night as operations against Hezbollah continued. Kevin?
Great. Trey Yingst for us. Trey, be safe. Thank you as always. Appreciate your time today. For more on the U.S. Iran ceasefire deadline, we want to welcome Kyron Skinner, Fox News contributor to the on this particular topic, and I think it goes without saying that most people feel like this really wasn't much of a ceasefire when you frankly consider the U.S. hit them, they hit some ships. Does it really mean anything to you that the ceasefire deadline is effectively over tomorrow?
It does mean something. The ceasefire broke down in the first instance because the Tehran government violated it with continual menacing of ships and any activity through the Strait of Hormuz. So it starts with them. And when President Trump caught up to what they were doing, he reimposed sanctions and economic sanctions, and he has declared he will even double down on those sanctions, making them much more restrictive than the IRGC and the government have ever seen. So it starts with a rogue regime that refuses to understand and support international conventions. What's at stake right now, when you think about it in this war, Kevin, is the fact that we have one nation that is violating a fundamental free, open, and safe navigation of the seas.
Right.
And it does not.
Right.
Yes, and it does not. And as a result, it is holding the world hostage. We're in a global hostage crisis. That's the way I've been putting it lately. Due to one nation, it's impossible to negotiate with them until they understand the level of pain that can be inflicted on them. And that's what President Trump is prepared to do, the non-kinetic side, with the new round of sanctions and really the new round of organizing of nations of goodwill against the world.
We've got about 45 seconds, but I did want to get you to weigh in on this. I liked how you put it, a global hostage crisis, and yet would need global cooperation to really make a big difference, especially if the president continues to affect more economic pressure. But frankly, I think it goes without saying, it's not just China, it's not just Russia, it's some of the actors in Europe who say one thing out of their mouth and then do something else to try to prop up the regime as well. What can we do to get a global frankly, global cooperation in making sure that this thing ends sooner than later by applying all we can?
You're spot on that question, and in fact, it's organically. Even the Europeans, the Russians, and the Chinese aren't where they need to be on the column of freedom. The rest of the world is actually moving in that direction. Look at what the Mecca Accord has done with the Saudis, the Turks, the Pakistanis coming together in a mutual defense pact, Iraq and Jordan trying to open a pipeline, the Saudis beefing up at an unusual rate the East-West pipeline. Iran is being encircled by new actors that are coming together in unprecedented ways to say, we want freedom. And then the OPEC countries that are doing unexpected increases in their oil exploration. Brazil, for example, Guyana, the big surprise of the last 10 years. They're just new zones of freedom that are emerging, and that supports the United States and Israel. And it's not being directed by the U.S. or Israel. As I just said, this is an organic response to the that Iran finds itself in.
I love that, because I think ultimately the international community really wants peace in the region, and if it can't rely on the Iranians to step back and respect international waters, collectively we're going to all have to figure out a way to get around it, and that seems to be happening both organically and through some strategic planning between the U.S. and our partners in the region. Kyron Skinner, a great pleasure, my friend. Thank you as always for your time on a weekend. Have a good one.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube, and catch full shows streaming now on Fox 1.
Ukraine launching one of its biggest aerial attacks against Russia since the war began. Have you heard about this? Stephanie Bennett has the latest on that. She is in London. Stephanie.
Hey, Kevin. Yeah, well, it was yet another night of heavy strikes on both sides of this war, and the images are pretty striking. Take a look. They just say it all. This year, Kyiv, of course, has stepped up its attacks, striking deeper inside Russia with long swarms of drones targeting military and energy facilities. Ukraine launched, like you said, one of its largest attacks on Russia today, killing at least 6 people. It's destroyed Wildberries warehouses, Russia's online retail giant, similar to Amazon, which you're seeing right there, burning billions of dollars worth of merchandise. But Kyiv accuses it of handling military goods. Russia's Ministry of Defense said it's destroyed 822 Ukrainian drones overnight. Some 600 were heading to Moscow. A third of those destroyed over the Moscow region itself, according to the mayor. An 8-year-old was killed in several homes, a railway station, and reports of a Russian rocket fuel plant were also damaged elsewhere. Meanwhile, President Volodymyr Zelensky said at least 3 people were killed and more than a dozen others injured across Ukraine, hitting a steel plant. And in Kyiv, a Russian missile sparked a major fire in the city's largest book markets, leaving rows of stalls burned down, destroyed, ruining people's livelihoods.
The market has been completely destroyed. The entire market, from one end to the other. Not a single stall is left.
Yeah, and Ukrainian military sources told the Sunday Times today that British-made drones are now being used for Ukraine to strike into Russia. Back to you, Kevin.
Stephanie Bennett for us in London. Much.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube, and catch full shows streaming now on Fox 1.
Joining me now, Fox News senior strategic analyst General Jack Keane. General Keane, the senior White House official said the president was speaking in jest there, but your thoughts about his comment and the Strait of Hormuz?
Well, I agree with the statement as all officials have made, and I mean the president has made similar statements about aspirational goals and getting the canal back under our control and other things. Listen, where are we here? Let's unpack it a little bit for our audience, because we're clearly in a different phase. We went to a ceasefire on April the 7th after 38 days of military operations. Had 14 days to go. And we gave up finishing those military objectives because our priorities essentially changed. And why was that? Well, the Iranians took control of the Straits of Hormuz and shut it down on March the 2nd. And we were living with that for a month. And therefore, our priorities in terms of economic priorities, oil and gas prices, political priorities dealing with the upcoming midterm elections became paramount. And that's why we went to the ceasefire. Iranians were offering, Kaylee, a negotiated deal over the Straits of Hormuz. And of course, we know even when they signed a deal with our president, that blew up in our faces. So the diplomatic phase that we entered into as a primary objective really hasn't worked out very well. But we, on April the 13th, obviously a week after the ceasefire, to help with that diplomatic phase, we put in a naval blockade. And that put huge economic pressure on the regime, but not enough pressure on them to obviously make a deal that they're willing to comply with. So now we're in an increased economic phase. Secretary Besson, economic restraint that he can externally on this regime. And it's quality work that he and his team are clearly doing. So the objective here is to mount as much economic pressure on the regime as possible in the upcoming weeks, knowing full well that the military is in place. The Israelis are at full magazine depth, and Admiral Cooper, CENTCOM forces in the region, we actually have more capability now in the region than we had when we began the war on February the 28th. So that obviously is on standby. I think what will likely happen here, we have to be prepared for the Iranians to make another miscalculation, Kaylee. And what do I mean by that? Because I think as we get closer to the midterms, they're going to think that if they conduct some aggressive violent acts against U.S. bases or allies in the region, we won't do anything about it because the midterms are coming, and that would sort of poison the well in terms of the election itself. President Trump will respond if Iran takes that kind of action. So we'll see what happens over the next several weeks as the economic pressure builds. Where the Iranians are in the heads, they believe they can ride this out economically. That's where they are, and we have to understand that. And we're 4 months into the kind of economic pressure already, and they obviously have not relented or even been willing to go into any serious negotiations that they're willing to comply with. So it remains to be seen what's going to happen over the next several weeks here.
General Keane, I want to ask you about another situation that's been playing out in the media. The president and others have been critical of the media for talking about this issue because, after all, these are U.S. service members, they're deployed. However, it's been a long time, 266 days deployed, 4 days in a combat zone. The statement from the acting Secretary of the Navy says they will return home soon for part of a planned rotation. Your thought? These are very hard decisions for a commander-in-chief to make, and these are very big sacrifices that our troops are making each and every day.
Yeah, well, they certainly do, and they're trained and they're disciplined. And when they're doing something like this, and they know the significance of it, morale is very good. There's a sense of purpose and meaning in what they're doing. They obviously would like to be on a normal rotation. This is not a normal rotation. This is war. I mean, our troops were in Iraq and Afghanistan for 12 months and 15 months. And he was supporting that. Now the Navy and our air power, but the Navy's deployed and more isolated than our air power is certainly, and they certainly can deal with that. CENTCOM commander just left that ship, the Abraham Lincoln, by the way, and he said it was very, very impressive seeing the quality of what is happening there in the troops themselves. I think they've taken a couple of incidents that we always have. Listen, there's always stress on our troops, and some of them do need counseling as a result of that stress. I mean, this is not normal in terms of the pressure that's on a human being here. So that takes place routinely. But the idea of people that diving off these ships and committing suicide, that's just not facts. And they're taking a misinterpretation of them and sensationalize them. And that's really unfortunate because it's insulting to the troops who are out there and the performance that they have turned in here and will continue to turn in.
Yes, and while the acting secretary said there have been some mental issues, there have been no loss of life, and we pray for our service members every day during their deployments. General Jack Keane, thank you so much.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox 1.
For more on this, let's bring in the former ambassador at large and counterterrorism coordinator under President Trump's first term, Nathan Sales. Mr. Ambassador, thank you for joining us today.
Great to be here.
So everyone controls the strait, apparently. It seems like we're going in circles here. What is the state of play here, and how does the administration break out of it?
Yeah, a test of will, but diplomacy is also a test of wills. And right now, what we're seeing is both sides digging in their heels and refusing to budge. Long term, I think the United States has a strategic advantage here because we have the ability to crush Iran's economy. We're imposing a blockade, we're imposing sanctions, and this is costing Iran an estimated $435 million a day. And that starts to add up with an economy that's already fragile. Now, Iran knows this, and what they're trying to do is weaponize the strait in a similar way and impose pain on the United States and our Gulf partners and the rest of the world. And the question is, who's going to blink first? a higher threshold for economic pain, I think it's the United States. I think our economy is much more resilient and durable, and the Iranians are really grasping at straws here. But ultimately, war and diplomacy alike, who is going to be able to impose their will on the adversary?
During President Trump's first term, you were at state, I was covering state. It was the time of maximum pressure where the U.S. was putting maximum diplomatic sanctions pressure against Iran. This is a regime that appears on the surface to have very little concern for the well-being of its citizens, let's say. How difficult is it to compel the Iranian regime to change its behavior? It seems like this is something the U.S. has been years.
So we don't want our sanctions to impose pain on the innocent Iranian people because they've been suffering under this regime for 4 years. They are our friends. They are our natural allies. We have a shared interest in the regime having less power, less influence. Now, how do you impose pain on the regime? What you do is you target the IRGC. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps is not just the shock troops of the Islamic Revolution. They also run the economy. They have so penetrated the Iranian economy. There's front companies, there's banks, there's construction companies, infrastructure. When you impose sanctions on what seems like the legitimate Iranian economy, you're actually hurting the power behind the throne, the shock troops of the Iranian Revolution. So keep up the pressure, not just on the regime as such, but on the pressure points within the regime that are responsible for maintaining the grip on power. That's the IRGC, that's the Basij militia, and other instruments.
How difficult is it for those at Treasury and State to keep up with how the IRGC transforms it and how it tries to evade American sanctions and that underground economy that it has developed and profited on as a result of these sanctions?
Yeah, it's a great question. And our sanctions targeters are the best in the business. They have information from open source. They have other kinds of information that they use to identify underneath the surface what are the moving pieces that are evolving and changing in order for the Iranians to sustain their campaign of sanctions evasion. It's a game of whack-a-mole. We've got a really big hammer. That's the good news. But we have to constantly be vigilant to identify those evolutions to keep the pressure up.
And part of this game, or not game, it's a war of making sure that one side outlasts the other. There is concern of reporting that the U.S. weapon stockpiles, particularly Reaper drones, I think the Washington military has lost roughly 25% of its Reaper drones. How much of a vulnerability is that for the U.S.?
It's a big problem, and this is a wake-up call. It's like a third or fourth wake-up call about the state of the U.S. defense industrial base. We clearly need to be doing a better job. We need to innovate our way out of this problem. We need to put more resources, appropriate more money for airplanes, for other platforms, because it's not just about Iran, it's about China and Russia, because those adversaries are watching. Are we able to sustain a fight? Fight is to demonstrate convincingly to your enemies like Russia, like China, that we have an overwhelming military advantage over them. If our defense industrial base can't keep up, the Russians are going to test us and the Chinese are going to test us.
Okay, Ambassador Nathan Sales, thanks for joining us.
Great to see you, Rich.
Appreciate it.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.
Alaska Democratic Senate candidate Mary Petolta turned down support from former Vice President Kamala Harris, trying to distance herself from the presidential nominee. Petola's campaign issued a statement saying, quote, "Mary isn't seeking endorsements from anyone from the lower 48. Her focus is and always will be Alaska." Let's bring in Joel Rubin, a former Maryland congressional candidate and the former Secretary of State under Obama. Thank you so much for being here. Then presidential candidate Kamala Harris loses Alaska to President Trump by 13, 14 points. You have this Democrat candidate. Harris sends out a fundraising email, mentions Mary Petola, and they want nothing to do with it. Does this say anything more about the Democratic Party, or does this about the fact that the former Vice President Kamala Harris is going to have a tough go at it moving forward if she has any plans about seeking office again?
Yeah, Brian, it's great to be with you. And look, for Democrats, if we want to take back the Senate, we need to have wins in places like Alaska. And so for the former vice president to get in the middle of it, if she really wants to help, she needs to stay out. And I think she should have read the room. She should have spoken to the Peltola people ahead of time, asked if they wanted her support. Mary Peltola, it turns out, of course, didn't even endorse her in 2024. And so it wouldn't have been a surprise if she had said no. And I find it very disappointing that the Harris team nonetheless decided to do this just before the election on Tuesday. And not only that, they're also raising in a manner where they get half of the revenue for themselves. So sort of asking for money without permission from the star, the candidate. It really is unseemly, and I really wish she hadn't done it.
You know, it seems like it's pretty self-serving. And Alaska State Representative Rebecca Himshoot on Kamala Harris, this is what she said, quote, "She's riding Mary Peltola's coattails, and she's not even running for anything that anyone knows of yet, and didn't do well here to begin with." So what do you make of that, Joel?
Yeah, no, I'm in full agreement, Brian. Look, you know, this is not a good look for the Harris operation to basically ask for money on the backs of that candidate. It's as if I were to write an email and say, endorse Barack Obama, and of course take half the money from me without getting President Obama's permission. It's unseemly. It's not how we should do things. The best way for her to help is to not help.
What does this say generally, Joel, about the Democratic Party? Because the Democrats need to win 4 Senate seats if they want to take control back in the Senate. They want to be the majority. Alaska is a big part of that, but you have candidates in places like North Carolina and Maine that are also kind of running away from the establishment. They don't really want anything to do with this current establishment Democratic Party. That's got to be concerning if you're Ken Martin in the DNC.
Yeah, our brand is not doing very well right now. I can say nothing but the truth on this, and I don't think any Democrat can, with a straight face, tell you that they're happy about the public positioning of the Democratic brand. That said, there's some really strong candidates and really strong policy positions that are advocating for, and I think that's where you see a candidate like Mary Peltola, you see up in Maine, you see in different parts of the country candidates running on their own bona fides and their own argument that they will represent their people. Running on the brand of the Democrats right now, it's a hard sell alone. The party is in a lot of flux. We have a lot of issues to iron out internally. So for these candidates, it should be, and they are making it about themselves if they want to be effective in these midterms.
So the last day of the summer meetings for the Democrats happened today. They voted and approved a new calendar for the 2028 presidential primaries here, or for the election here. And South Carolina's first, Nevada, New Hampshire, New Mexico, Michigan, Virginia, no more Iowa and New Hampshire leading the way. Does that map make a DSA Democratic presidential candidate more or less likely?
You know, I think the new schedule is important. Look, is what we're just talking about. We need to shake things up in the Democratic Party. And there is a chance with this new outline in South Carolina being first to have a more moderate electorate actually showing up in the primaries to push the DSA out. Look, DSA, from my perspective, is toxic. They are harming Democrats across the country. They may win in some certainly blue pockets. But their national message, all you have to hear the leadership of the DSA answering questions horrifically in podcasts over last week to understand how dangerous they would be to take control of the Democratic Party. And so the fight is on the inside right now. This new calendar will, I believe, help to bring more moderate Democrats into the process early, because if we only have the base and the extreme, the DSA candidate is much more likely, and we need to avoid that at all costs.
And quickly, Joel, what is your opinion on Hassan Piker, and mainly less of maybe your opinion on Hassan, but your opinion on candidates who are seemingly just not willing to go against Hassan Piker? And I think we may have just lost your shot, Joel. Oh, you're back. Go ahead, Tom.
I'm back. Sorry about that. You know, Hassan Piker should be out. He should not be alongside any Democratic. He's disqualifying as a public voice. Let him have his podcast. But any official Democratic Party action alongside Hassan Piker, be it a candidate or the party events, you know, they then get tarred with all of his vitriol, his misogyny, and his anti-Semitism. And that's not what we Democrats stand for, and it's not how we're going to appeal to the broad, moderate electorate of this country to win these elections going forward.
Okay. Joel Rubin. Joel, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Brian.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Lee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily
in politics in a nonchalant way. The reason I say that is because I had no idea the week was that weird until I read this headline. Are you ready?
Let's hear it.
Brad Pitt confesses he's no longer sober. I'm back off the wagon. Okay. Yeah, that hit home for me because a lot of people confuse me with Brad Pitt on the street, obviously.
Naturally.
My producer, Max, says I look like his brother, Brad Pitt. But seriously, if Pitt needed a drink this week, what chance does the rest of America have?
Have you ever been sober?
Me?
Yeah, like are you sober now?
Not counting the bath salts. Yeah. No, but it was a rowdy week. I'm going to start here, okay, since the talk was around crazy. AOC and Woke One. Did you guys see AOC try to excuse defund the police and all that garbage by saying Woke One was crazy? I'll play it for the people who didn't see it. Just watch.
Okay. I have a local city councilman that has this saying Woke One was crazy.
Woke One was crazy. Okay.
Doesn't she sound like a teenager who came home stoned and didn't expect to run into her parents? You know what I mean? Woke One was crazy. But here's a semi-serious point. It's like admitting that you knew it was crazy, but you went along with it is actually just telling us you're going to fall for the next thing too. It doesn't make it better.
Referring to Woke One means that we're now into at least Woke Two. And if Woke Two is the woman I interviewed a couple weeks ago on Fox News Sunday, who told me that it was time to abolish jails, borders, ICE, the Supreme Court, the presidency. If that's Woke Two, then Woke One looks pretty tame.
Woke One could have aired on the Disney Channel, you know?
Look where we've come in like 4 years.
Right after Snow White and the 7 Inches. Hold on. They're a little woke over there. Behave. I have a lot of appreciation for the job Caroline Leavitt did because if you're the White House press secretary under this president, you are actually the visiting team at every game. You know, the press is very hostile with her, okay? And she's obviously our outgoing press secretary. I think it's admirable what she's doing, but there's a lot of rumors about who could come next. I just want to show you one of the pictures flying around the internet. Take a look, crowd. I don't know.
A man with experience behind the podium.
Thank
Can we see that picture again really quick?
Let's get a look.
Because I can't really see. Are you wearing pants? Or no?
So here's where it gets awkward.
I can't tell.
Here's where it gets awkward. Then yes, now no. Kidding. But I don't even want the job. I just want to get back in to get my cocaine out of the lockers. You know what I mean?
Hey, listen, no one's ever taken credit for that. So.
No, if somebody's got to own up.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.
On President Trump's campaign. That happened, and then when people start digging into that and figuring something out, then it's on to this next thing. He fires Comey, and they go after Jeff Sessions, and as you point out, they launched this operation a few years later when a number of us are starting to dig into Joe Biden and all the crazy things that went on there with Ukraine and bereavement and his son Hunter Biden, and they run an operation against members of Congress and other people affiliated with or associated with the Trump campaign, Trump administration.
Right.
That's how ridiculous it was. Running ops against the government, the FBI was doing this.
Yeah, and on the Biden side, of course, it was Russian disinformation. Nobody wanted to pursue that narrative or look into any of the details. But when it came to President Trump, you needed a special counsel investigation where we did get more detail, which was helpful. But when you learn little pieces of the timeline like this, you see just how bad it was.
Yeah, remember, so the Clinton campaign does that. Comey uses that ridiculous document to go spy on President Trump's campaign. 4 years later, they run an operation with members of Congress and members of President Trump's administration to try to help Biden win. So it was always designed to hurt President Trump, his opponent win. It was designed to help Clinton win in 16, Biden win in 24, and then frankly, you could say, or in 20, and then in 24, you could say, well, Jack Smith was designed to help Biden or Kamala Harris win and President Trump lose in 24. So they ran operations each and every time President Trump was running for office.
Even as you uncover all of this detail, there are some advisors, like White House advisor Peter Navarro, who says you haven't done enough to investigate some of this weaponization. What is your rebuttal to that?
Done everything we can. We've referred people for prosecution. We referred John Brennan because we know he lied to us. We referred him 8 months ago to the Justice Department. We just recently referred Jack Smith because he lied to us. He said he only got the records, the phone records of members of Congress. He said he did not get contents of members' communications. And then we find out, oh, he went to the National Archives and got text messages between members of President Trump's administration and members of Congress. And he had that information and didn't tell us that when we deposed him. So he lied to us. We referred him. And we've also referred Thomas Wyndham, one of his deputies, for prosecution as well, because he tried to obstruct our investigation into this whole operation that they're running against President Special Counsel.
And we're at home. They're winning some of their races. Some people say we actually shouldn't be wasting time looking into what happened in the past, but we should on moving forward. Others say you need to do a little bit of both to balance everything out because the past is important for the future. But your thoughts on where the Republicans stand for the midterms on the messaging around affordability and trying to win some of the key races?
Well, I always say we make this job way too complicated. It's pretty basic. What you tell the voters you were going to do when you ran for the office. If you win, go do what you say. I think we've done that. We said we would secure the border with the help of President Trump, and of course his great work. We've done that. We said we would cut taxes. We did that. The economy is moving in a pretty good direction, but I understand there are costs out there that are tough on middle class and working class families. We're working on that. But I do think that when you step back and look at the midterms, the real takeaway I think is going to be all the crazy positions the left, which now controls their party, all the crazy positions they're taking. I mean, it's crazy to defund the police. It's crazy to say you want to abolish ICE. It's crazy to say men should compete against women in sports. It's crazy to shut down the government twice in one Congress is what the Democrats did. It's crazy to have this sanctuary jurisdiction policy where politicians tell local law enforcement not to work with federal law enforcement when it comes to enforcing federal law. Dumbest thing. All these are, for goodness sake. So I think we need to show that.
Brains away to some of these people who are just going to the far left fringes and extreme. But then there are people like AOC who have been smarter about it. Now she's laughing off.
At us in 2020.
Congressman Jim Jordan, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it.
You bet.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and
yesterday in New York.
Think of it, 125 years ago, we broke the record. It's amazing. It's amazing. So all of it.
Yeah, so take a look at some of these new numbers that show the difference. Dropped by 18%, by more than 7%. Cases of robbery decreased by roughly 18%. Property crime dropped by 12%, and aggravated assaults decreased by roughly 7%.
A terror.
Rejected those claims. The Strait of Hormuz cannot be seized with a tweet, an aircraft carrier, an executive order, or an election speech. New attention also on the U.S. linking over reports of mental health issues on board. The San Diego-based aircraft carrier has been deployed for 9 months, which includes a record-setting time at sea of more than 200 days.
No. Not nearly long enough. Thank you.
Of the captains that he puts in command of the carrier strike group that's affecting these sailors and Marines.
The idea of abortion is insulting to the troops who are out there and the performance that they have turned in here.
The president says that ship is being relieved by the Navy.
Latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming on Fox 1. The Strait of Hormuz cannot be crossed. President Trump says to resume as Fred is set to expire. Jonathan.
Good evening, Brian. News could it be essentially part of the United States?
Defeating pretty soon territory of the United States.
Is worth looking at an upcoming deadline of Monday. Remember the memorandum of understanding between the U.S. back in June. Nobody's paid much attention to it, of course, but it had a 60-day ceasefire written to it. That ceasefire.
YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox 1.
Middle East, the 60-day ceasefire agreement with Iran is set to
from Washington, D.C. Good morning, Maddie.
Hi, good morning. Ending without a deal. By multiple days of strikes between the two sides. For an Iranian source, there is now no talk of an extension as the U.S. ceasefire agreement. The U.S. says its attacks at the end of July in order to give diplomacy. Administration officials today, but there have been reports that depleted U.S. munitions, potentially constraining the president, instigating the effort to strengthen forces, carry the voice of the Iranian nation to the world, and take action to reclaim Iran. During President Trump's speech on Friday, he alluded to the complications of talks, saying it's difficult to negotiate with the leadership in Charles.
Thanks for raising Polani. No, the people of Iran have been noticeable. A lot of perhaps good reasons, given the fact that many of them have been killed by the regime. But interesting that he's calling on them to rise up because, of course, that is the answer to
oftentimes reports out of Washington to it. Partner Israel on board, which is
sort of on and off.
Hopefully, we'll cut them some agreement.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full Fox 1.
Well, the U.S. 60-day ceasefire agreement with Iran is set to expire tomorrow as tensions still remain high. Chief correspondent Yingst joins us from Tel Aviv with Trey. Good morning.
Yeah, hey, Rachel, good morning. 60 days since the memorandum of understanding was signed between the United States and Iran, and technically it is set to expire. Reports indicate states and Iran, and technically it is set to expire. Reports indicate very little progress on a diplomatic solution to reopen the Strait of Hormuz and address Iran's nuclear ambitions. This weekend, Iran continued attacks in the Strait. On Saturday, a bulk carrier reported being hit by an unknown projectile. A day prior, an was also targeted. President Trump conflict with Iran and the Strait of Hormuz.
After we meeting, which is foremost of the United States. Essentially, that's what it is. We have the blockade. No ships get through it.
With a focus on Iran, we're also tracking the latest developments between Israel Hezbollah violated the ceasefire over the weekend, 3 Israeli soldiers. This prompted
Hezbollah committed two major violations today. They struck Israeli troops who were operating in the security zone in contravention of the ceasefire agreement. And then when Israel responded, they moved civilians inside their terrorist headquarters, their own civilians as human shields, so they could point at Israel and say that Israel is targeting civilians, which we are not doing.
Overnight, the Israeli military warned residents of Israel to be prepared for loud actions along the border as operations against continue. Rachel?
Trey, have civilians been targeted in Lebanon, or is that a correct report from the Israeli government?
The initial reports from southern Lebanon indicate that both Hezbollah operatives and civilians were killed in these limited Israeli strikes. But speaking, the strikes have decreased. The Israelis have only launched fresh airstrikes whenever the violations occurred, and Hezbollah says they may respond to these new Israeli strikes. So a lot of tension on the border as the region waits to see if a broader agreement can be reached.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox 1.
Eyes and ears when the president said during that he would declare the Strait of Hormuz a U.S. territory. He had a hint of sarcasm. I think it's fairly talking figuratively. U.S. would maintain control over the strait, the assets, the military assets it has there. In that same speech, the president also addressed the economic pain that many Americans are feeling as a result of this war, and it will be worth it. Listen here.
For you, tiny little bit more, you get to leave. Country cannot have a country is the number one. They have no leadership. Their leadership is gone. The first tour is gone. The second tour is gone. It is a problem.
But you would have to say that the Iranian leader, largely speaking with one voice over this past week in regards to the situation in the Strait, saying that control and that no ships should pass with, quote, the Strait of Hormuz cannot be seized by issuing an order, nor by an election speech. Threats nor cowards for displays of power. So we've seen Charlie.
Indeed. Jonathan in Tel Aviv. Thank you. Like and subscribe for all Fox News latest on now on Fox 1.
Chief of Staff and Home Security Advisor. I want you to pick up on this. Allegations of a vile temper, throwing water bottles, the guy running against Susan Collins in Maine. Then you got the situation with El Sayed and his BFF Hassan Piker. America deserved 9/11. The streets of America should run with the blood of capitalists and landlords. Praises dictators like and others. And far worse, I've played these things over. How is it possible that somebody that is best friends with that
a candidate, Tallarico, who is against Christianity, he's against oil and gas, and he's in sports. So that has about a 1% approval rating in the state of Texas. To talk about in Michigan, campaign with, to embrace friendship with, to court Sam Piker, who has supported the 9/11 attacks. So when you say, what we're saying is support a party to nominate somebody who is about how the Democrat Party repudiated, renounced the Michigan Senate candidate for his association.
Up on the president. And I look at their agenda, Stephen, Miller, and eliminate the Senate. We no longer get to choose the president. They want to pack the courts, amnesty for illegals, abolish borders, abolish ICE, end deportation, defund Department of War, abolish prisons and police, cradle to grave, womb to tomb, new Green Deal. Really, I need government healthy food. They've done such a good job in New York.
We are back with a Fox News alert. So tomorrow marks the end of that 60-day ceasefire deadline between the U.S. and Iran. Iran's military is now reportedly putting out $30,000 bounties on U.S. soldiers. Meanwhile, Hamas leaders are reportedly telling Jared Kushner that they will demilitarize Gaza as President Trump's Board of Peace tries to salvage peace talks. All right, a lot to get to here. Joey, we're going to start with, I guess, the ceasefire I don't know if we can even talk about it in those terms, right? So let's just talk about the current state of where we are with Iran and if peace talks are even on the table anymore, if that even means anything. Is that even meaningful? Now, perhaps in the Gaza situation, there's something that can be done there, probably more of a separate issue, although sometimes interconnected because of Iran's funding of these groups. But if we're talking about what Iran's going to do between now and midterms, we've had several experts on this channel that have said things are probably going to get more violent. There's probably going to be more provocation from Iran, and that's not something that we'd like to see. We don't want to see our service members in danger.
No,
but
of course not.
This could perhaps be the next iteration of what we're doing.
Yeah, I think it's a hurry up and wait game right now, which is something we say in the military a lot, which is like, let's rush to get this deal done, and then it's like it takes a lot longer to implement than it did to get it done. I think that the president wants some sort of economic warfare solution to this. I think that in his mind, if things can calm down enough and gas prices can stable enough, he can wait the Iranians out. I mean, nobody wants to sit there and say, oh man, I got to say uncle before you do. So, I mean, there's that element of just like, as a human being, you want to be the one that dictates when this thing is over. And I think Iran believes that November is kind of their finish line, right? If they can get the president to buckle by November or going into November, that's their best chance of surviving this. Is there a fear of a prolonged war? Of course there is, because one major terrorist attack in our country right now, and that's what we have. We're invading that country and we're full bore. So that's kind of the fear, the threat going into any military operation with what is radical Islamic terror, and that's what Iran is. But with all that being said, the blockade seems to be our best strategy. And even the administration said they let some ships out, and depends on where those ships are going, even some of the Iranian ships. So I don't know if the blockade itself is the stranglehold that we want it to be to hurry this up. So all of those tell me this may be a much longer endeavor than any of us want it to be.
Yeah, Jason, you didn't get a chance to comment on this yesterday as we discussed this issue, so I want to give you a chance as well to tell not only us but our audience where you think we stand right now. And is this about a nuclear Iran, or is this now almost entirely about the Strait of Hormuz?
I think for most Americans who maybe don't have a loved one in the military and fighting, for most Americans, it's sort of white static. It's sort of white noise. They've heard this time and time and time and time again. I think they do appreciate that Donald Trump has taken that nuclear option off the table for the Iranians, and we will probably never fully appreciate what it would have been like if we didn't take that option off the table. But it is about the price of gasoline. For most Americans, if the price of a barrel of oil is not down to $65, you're not paying $3 or less for a gallon of gas, they're going to take that out on Republicans. And you can already hear from Congressman Jim McGovern and others who've been around the block, they're just going to pound that on the Republicans, saying, hey, you said you were going to cut the price of gas. You said you were going to drive down inflation, even though it's a lot less than where we were with Joe Biden. There's still, people saw it touching $2 a gallon, and now it's not.
Yeah, it'd be nice if everything would get a little bit more.
It's not within reach of $2 a gallon.
Yeah, no, I think we're a ways from that.
But it used to.
It's really unfortunate because I remember the President's State of the Union, Lisa, when we were touting gas prices and energy independence, and then unfortunately this is what had to happen. And I think the American people are just looking for perhaps the justification for the pain that they've endured for the last several months. Yesterday you talked about the economic impact on Iran. Can we win this just economically?
I don't know. I mean, Joey would know better than me. I don't think so. But I mean, I appreciate the fact that they're trying to implement different pain points to Iran. They're essentially trying to get Iran to say mercy, but Iran doesn't seem anywhere close, at least now, of wanting to say that or feel that the pain of these pressure points are worse than, succumbing to some sort of deal, right? Obviously, this started with the desire to deny their nuclear abilities, and now it seems we're stuck there because of the Strait of Hormuz. Yesterday, I had mentioned some of the pipelines that are getting created or coming online in the Middle East, where whether it's UAE or Saudi Arabia or Iraq trying to find ways to bypass Iran in the Strait of Hormuz. But yeah, I think this is a real challenge for the president. How do we get? I mean, you clearly see why the Middle East is such a tricky place and why we get into these forever wars and long-lasting wars in the Middle East. This originally was estimated to take weeks, and then now how long has it been? Yeah.
Jason, if you don't mind, I'd love to get Jason's take on this because he's the first former member we've had on since this happened. But when you have Turkey, Pakistan, and Saudi Arabia create a defense alliance, does the Trump administration see that as a win? Is that a make the region take responsibility for itself, or is that a liability? Hey, there's a NATO player in there with a country like Pakistan that's definitely played both sides.
Well, and you have Pakistan that's got nuclear capabilities, and so that complicates that whole arrangement. But to Lisa's point here, that Red Sea, the pinch point at the north, pinch point at the south, there have been shots fired, things going off there that have not allowed the oil to move. And so I do think the Iranians look at this and they just want scorched earth for everybody, and they don't want anything to be calm because I don't think they like Donald Trump. They don't want to have. They like the idea of Barack Obama and Joe Biden, where they would send a pallets of cash. That's the America they want. So they just want to bring it through.
Not send them a little button, in the mail. You hit a reset.
And also, one other thing too is we're dealing with terrorists here, right? I mean, we'd start off the show also talking about Hamas, which Iran funds 93% of their activities or something like that. So they're one of the same, but that's what we're dealing with here. We're dealing with terrorists. We're dealing with religious zealots, these Islamists who they'd rather die fighting for what they believe in than to try to strike a deal with us. So when you can't really, how do you reach some sort of rationale in dealing with people like that?
Yeah, it's an enemy that we fought for too long now, and I think the hardest part for this administration, just to bring it back to when you asked the question about nuclear or the Strait. It's hard for the American people to say, thank God they didn't get that nuclear button when we saw Colin Powell tell us all about nukes in the back of an 18-wheeler that never came to fruition.
Correct.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.
Ready to level up your content? Generate high-quality, human-like voiceovers in seconds with 11 Labs. Perfect for videos.
We are going to destroy their missiles and raise their missile industry to the ground. It will be totally, again, obliterated. We're going to...
The Texas Capitol grounds to the United States Supreme Court and won by making clear that the Ten Commandments were part of the legal system and traditions of the state of Texas from our beginning to who we are today. And we are just teaching components of what made Texas history what it is by the Ten Commandments, such as thou shalt not kill and other principles like that. Whereas these other religious faiths, they don't have the same application over the course of the history of the state of Texas, and hence do not need to be recognized either in our schools or on the Texas Capitol ground like other religions.
Okay, we will continue to follow it. Governor Greg Abbott, thank you very much for talking with us on the Sunday briefing, sir. Great to see you. Thank you.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.
We are back with a Fox News alert. So tomorrow marks the end of that 60-day ceasefire deadline between the U.S. and Iran. Iran's military is now reportedly putting out $30,000 bounties on U.S. soldiers. Meanwhile, Hamas leaders are reportedly telling Jared Kushner that they will demilitarize Gaza as President Trump's Board of Peace tries to salvage peace talks. All right, lots to get to here. Joey, we're going to start with, I guess, the ceasefire I don't know if we can even talk about it in those terms, right? So let's just talk about the current state of where we are with Iran and if peace talks are even on the table anymore, if that even means anything. Is that even meaningful? Now, perhaps in the Gaza situation, there's something that can be done there. Probably more of a separate issue, although sometimes interconnected because of Iran's funding of these groups. But if we're talking about what Iran's going to do between now and midterms, we've had several experts on this channel that have said things are probably going to get more violent. There's probably going to be more provocation from Iran, and that's not something that we'd like to see. We don't want to see our service members in danger, but this could perhaps be the next iteration of what we're doing.
Meanwhile, divisions are on display at the DNC summer meeting in Austin this weekend over the growing ideological divide with the far left and its push to abolish ICE, anti-Israel agenda, and that's just a few of the issues.
We must abolish ICE. It is a cruel, rogue agency.
New Mexico's a border
The
importance of protecting our border from
Israel has committed a genocide in Gaza, and we should have the courage to say so.
As a Zionist committed to Israel, while appalled by the continuing war crimes of Netanyahu.
I want to hear any more DFL, DSA, moderate. Baba, I want to hear the word Democrat.
Democrats also finalizing their 2028 primary calendar, moving more racially diverse states to the front. To start with South Carolina.
Fox News contributor and former GOP Congressman Jason Chaffetz joins us now. Great to see you, Jason. Glad to be here, especially in studio. Obviously, if you look at the map, you look at history, this should be a huge banner year for Democrats. And it may still be, but they have serious divisions that they're dealing with right now.
Yeah, they keep calling it a Big Tent, but ever since Nancy Pelosi left, she raised the most money. She kept them in line. She gave out the committee assignments. When she left, the whole thing just totally fell apart. And the DSA, the Democrats, socialists, these people, they're crazy. This is absolute crazy down
Let's talk about the money because it's important.
Yeah.
The gap between how much the RNC has versus the DNC is enormous.
Well, this goes back to Kamala Harris. What is it? $1.2+ billion was flushed down the drain. They got nothing for that. They blew through the money. If you're a Democrat, a mainstream Democrat, why would you give to these people? Why would you empower people that aren't even Democrats? I mean, Bernie Sanders, he may caucus with the Democrats, but he's not an actual Democrat. AOC, is that who you're going to give your money to? Well, the public is saying, no, we're not going to do that. Now, the NGOs, they're doing it. Outside money's coming in. But the traditional Democratic donor, they're not doing it.
No, she's got a great point. So the Republicans have $128 million on hand. The Democrats have $16 million on hand, but they're 18 in debt. So they're
that's the way they're going to run the government. That's what else do you need to know? That's what they do.
That tell you, because you were a member of Congress, you understand how these things work. Does it tell you that the grassroots Democrat out there is starting to shift towards these socialists? You have, by the way, I want to play this because former Virginia Governor Terry McAuliffe, we haven't heard from much. You're starting to see some of these elder statespersons of the Democrat Party coming out going, no problem, there's no problem, everything's good. But the money and the grassroots operation and the primary wins tell a different story. Here's McAuliffe.
And that's why this opportunity is so big for us to come together, get moving. And let me say another thing. I'm a little tired of all of this stuff you hear every day about all of these labels. DFL or DSA, moderate, progressive, whatever, liberal. You know, when I was governor of the Commonwealth, guess what? I created more jobs than any governor in the history of the Commonwealth of Virginia. Does that make me a centrist? But I also gave more people health care than any other time in the history of the Commonwealth of Virginia. Does that make me a socialist?
No, it makes me a damn good governor and a proud Democrat.
Does that fly? No. First of all, government doesn't create jobs. People and businesses do create jobs. But other than that, I think he's right. Let's believe him. These people are Democrats. They try to put other labels on it. But at the end of the day, if they go to the ballot, it's going to say Democrat next to them. That's what they want. They want that brand. They want to be able to do that. But to your point, Charlie, they should be surging. These people, I mean, in an off-year election, they should be surging. It's not. And it's, race by race. But to say they're not in favor of ICE and borders and private property, and they want to reconstitute the presidency, they want to pack the court. I mean, other than that, it's just great.
Every now and then we get some reminders of our friend Charlie Kirk. Something goes viral that maybe, he said a year or two ago. The latest one is a debate, or him talking actually about Hassan Piker's socialist hypocrisy. So we're going to watch this. I want to get your reaction.
Why don't you give 95% of your money away and go live on a commune?
Do you really think that that's how it works? Do you really think
Why
that's
not?
how it works?
Go
This is
live
as
what
silly.
you preach. Because every single
This is as silly.
Uninterrupted for 5 minutes. Hassan,
Okay, go ahead. Sorry, you're right.
live
You're right.
what I practice.
Make
I'm
your
a free market
ridiculous
capitalist. I employ people. I took a risk. I have my own startup business. Every single day, I practice what I preach. He wants other people to contribute to what he considers to be a good idea, what he considers will make the world a better place. You have the freedom to go live as a socialist. Go do it, Hassan. What's stopping you?
And I want to talk about Hassan Piker in this, but every time I see Charlie, I realize we lost somebody who I think would have been a president at one point. But
He was the best of the best. And September 10th, which is coming up quick, was the day of that assassination. But you could see why he was the best. And you could see in that video, Hassan Piker just nervous as all could be, because when pressed with facts and somebody who knows their stuff, they're left with nothing.
And by the way, a date that Jason will never forget. No. You were 40 feet from him at that event.
A little further from that, but there were 3,000 people that were there watching, and I was watching Charlie when that happened. And that's a hard day for the Chaffetz family, and the Kirk family, but thousands of others that were right there.
Yeah, and all of America. Yeah. We lost a great patriot. I want to ask you about this real quick. The flock cameras are getting a due notice over the last couple of weeks. They've been around for a while. In fact, you wrote a book about this issue of the security around them and the invasiveness of these cameras. They're everywhere. They collect. You see them on police cars. They collect data. Flock Safety, the company that is behind them, says that they're going to implement these measures. But the thing that I think is kind of interesting and important to remember about all this, there's a lot of money behind it. People make tons of money off of this stuff.
And don't think Flock is just a brand.
Right.
It really is NGOs, big business, and big government. People would be shocked about how much money, time, and effort is being spent to capture your likeness. And states, what bothers me is government collects this data. Florida, for instance, when you went in to get your driver's license, they would take all that information. Think about that. They have your picture, eye color, height, weight, everything, and then they would sell it to data brokers.
And when you take your kid in to get their
your 16-year-old daughter to get her driver's license in Florida, they were selling that information.
Is that still happening? So first of all,
no, Ron DeSantis, fortunately, Governor
that's in Florida,
DeSantis, but other states do this.
I was just going to say that I got back from I was spending a lot of time this summer in Wisconsin, in the Midwest, in rural America. Data centers are a top issue, as well as flock cameras. And maybe flock cameras are taking over, even like being a number one issue. So I get that state governments and police want this data. I don't agree with it, but okay, I see why they. But what are these companies doing with all?
They sell it to the data brokers. The data brokers then can compare it to everything online. There are companies out there that capture billions and billions. They scrape all your social media. They scrape everything out there. Then they combine that. They create a profile. I believe you, as an American, have a right to anonymity. You should be able to go out into the public.
Let me quickly take the devil's advocate, which is in the case of Florida, it was the flock camera system that was able to catch Ryan Ruth. So it appears it does serve some sort of law enforcement benefit.
But what you will also find is, for instance, in Utah, we had one city where it was by the hundreds of thousands of times law enforcement was scraping that data, trying to figure things out. When they catch a kidnapper or something, or a bank robber, everybody says, yeah, that's great. But you cannot live your life right now. And what's going on with AI, if you